The American Dream. In an article published by the National Geographic titled Urban Sprawl, John Mitchell depicted that dream as one of the largest state surrounded by white picket fence with a green yard, a car in the driveway, and a house. As cities became crowded and polluted, people wanted to change their lifestyles. They wanted to move to the suburbs and live the American dream. I'm Angelique Coriac, this is Kara Rodriguez, Garrett Gillette, and Joseph Gaines. We are faced with the question, do the social implications of urban sprawl outweigh its environmental impacts? When researching this topic, the idea of the American dream occurred repeatedly. In order to fully grasp the association between the American dream and urban sprawl, it was crucial to gain a deeper understanding of both. Urban sprawl is defined as the process of expansive suburban development over large areas, spreading out from a city in which the automobile is the primary source of transportation. It became evident that the development of extensive railroads, roadways, and the extensive use of cars allowed the increased accessibility and affordability of life in the suburbs, which made the American dream now attainable to the average person. Suburbs are able to give consumers what cities lack, which is why urban sprawl is so prevalent in our society. Consumer preference, lower land rates, and lower property tax rates, among others, are large contributors to urban sprawl. Higher income consumers tend to prefer larger estates, allowing more space for them and their families, which cities lack. Centers of urban development have also made people want to stop settling in those areas and to venture farther out into the suburbs. Other contributors to urban sprawl include improved infrastructure, decreasing crime rates, a lack of urban planning, a rise in the standard of living, and diminishing worries of overcrowding and multiple modes of transportation. This sprawl gives residents of the United States a chance to live the American dream, which in turn has blinded them to what has happened as a result.
As Angela mentioned earlier, the desire for the car in suburban areas actually increased to a necessity. Because in the city, they have public transit. This would be buses, trams, the subway, etc. While in the suburban area, you require the car. The car isn't very effective. It creates a lot of air pollution with the fact that you can't really carry around people with how much air pollution it actually emits. Dr. Howard Frumkin, in his book Urban Sprawl and Public Health, talks about this increased air pollution in the suburban areas, specifically Atlanta, where 47% of the total air pollution is caused by cars. In America, and across America, the average is 30%. Now, other countries are also dealing with this problem too, with China having a very large air pollution. They have 10 times as much as all the worst cities in America. This is also leading them to having to create solutions through actually having air centers. These air centers are filled with bags full of air that they bring in from across the country into the cities on days of heavy smog, where children and other citizens are able to actually breathe air because of how bad the air pollution is. But this expansion into the suburban zone isn't only releasing air pollutants, but water pollutants as well. These water pollutants are created by runoff from factories, sewage treatment plants, and lawns to enter the ecosystem. This increase in nutrients from fertilization from fertilization of lawns also creates a process called eutrophication. This is caused when the nutrients go into the ecosystem and allow for increased algae growth, which also goes over across the ecosystem. This runoff is becoming more and more common. Where in Wisconsin, 90% of the lakes and 40% of the streams are being affected by this runoff, creating suburban areas with asphalt and concrete also leads to destruction of streams, lakes, and the taxes the areas of aquifers. These different waterways are what keep the surrounding ecosystems and allows for water to actually get to the aquifer. And with destruction and basically reducing the less surface area of the soil, you're actually creating a possibility of actually running out of water for the aquifer. And this is also accelerated by the use of water for lawns and other recreational purposes. This affects surrounding ecosystems and leads to detrimental effects on the wetlands around suburban areas.
As Angelique stated, people moved out of the cities and into urban environments, which depleted our wetlands. In fact, according to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, more than half of the wildlife and wetlands in the United States have been removed due to aspects of urban sprawl such as dredging and filling. Tens and thousands of acres of wetlands continue to be destroyed every single year, with about 2/3 resulting from urban expansion and rural development, which is quite evident in states like our home, Florida. A case study was conducted by the United States National Park Service on Florida panthers. Animals like the Florida panther are at risk for becoming extinct. This is due to urban growth and expansion of the regional highway number into former panther habitat. Former panthers are thousands of species who are being found dead due to automobile accidents. The expansion plows over natural ecosystems, leaving the land left over to become affected by runoff, as Garrett explained. But there is a slight positive. Sprawl initiates the division of little subparts into forests and grasslands into smaller, which leads to the creation of more common animals in our area, like deer and raccoons, and little squirrels. The Environmental Protection Agency defines a brownfield as abandoned or underused facilities where expansion or redevelopment is compromised by real or perceived environmental contamination. So as people move from cities, they left their warehouses and industrial sites abandoned, and toxins and pollutants just were left there, and that destroys the environment and poisons humans. A study was done in Baltimore, which is home to over 1,000 vacant industrial sites in which the environmental impacts were not yet known. A screening was conducted in the area, and a wide range of substances were found, such as chlorinated hydrocarbons, which are toxic. Communities in the area have surplus mortality rates due to respiratory disease, heart disease, and cancer compared to city, state, and national averages. But on a more positive note, brownfields can and are being disposed of, allowing space for recreational activities.
Now, it should be obvious to know that we can't expand forever. There is a finite amount of land. And between 1964 and 2002, Florida lost 6 million of its 15 million acres of arable land. Between now and 2020, we're predicted to only have 6 million left. Another issue with the suburbs is, while the suburbs have better education because it's funded at the local level and they have richer, more expensive properties, which allows them to fund it more readily, inner city schools suffer from this because they don't get as good funding. Now, this could be stopped if we increase federal funding for education, which a poll commissioned by the Committee for Education Funding showed that 60% of Americans would support this measure. There are solutions, however. Now, as Garrett mentioned, cars are very prevalent in suburbs. Transport accounts for 30% of all carbon emissions. 88% of all trips in the US are made by car. Despite public transport only being 12% of all trips, it currently saves about 1.4 billion gallons of gas, which is 14 million tons of CO2. Now, another solution is increasing density, such as is being implemented in Fairfax County, Virginia, in a place called Tyson's Corner. They currently have more parking spaces than jobs or residents. As Clark Tyler, the chairman of the task force made to alter Tyson, said, every morning 110,000 cars arrive, and they all leave at 5. Between now and 2050, they plan to go from 17,000 residents to 100,000. Wow. Now, they're doing this while increasing public transport, such as the Metro Rail Silver Line, which opened this year, which reduces congestion and saves the environment. They are a leader, and they can show that it can be implemented no matter where you are in the United States. Thank you.
Where did you guys get your information from? Was it from one source, multiple sources, and if it was from multiple, which one was the most effective?
We use multiple sources. We get a total of around 30. A lot of them are for government agencies such as the EPA and the CDC. We also use around 5 different textbooks, environmental textbooks, and Barron's to help us, gather information. And other sources, we made sure that they all had credible people making them well with degrees. The most beneficial one, I'd say, was the EPA, because it explained what pollutants were in the air and what pollutants were in the water and what effects that had on the environment compared to the other sources who were more just generalizing.
Okay, thank you. Was there any evidence that you used, that you gathered that you didn't use in the presentation?
There was actually a lot of evidence that lot, but there was so much that we could have used. For the social aspects, we wanted to go more into the pros and cons, but because of time constraints, we weren't able to do that. In my particular individual research paper, I talked about how urban sprawl came about and how it actually started with land ordinances in New York City, which started urban sprawl in the United States, how they were government-funded initiatives to move white people out to the suburbs. And that's what Joseph was talking about with the education, how it left the inner city people with a lack of education. And then there are more facts about the environment also that we weren't able to use.
Do you think that this project has changed the decisions that you are going to make as you go from teenager to adult?
I personally would probably think about possibly living in the city now because of the fact that I know how much of an effect it has on the environment. I'm also even talking about friends and that kind of thing about actually considering their actions. And it also kind of made me think about more in terms of like actually even just college, kind of what degrees I want to go into. Because I was actually able to explore the environment and that kind of thing and see different aspects that I wasn't actually considering before that weren't even related to this. It was just the environment aspects.
As you guys went through the process, did you feel like your research, what that first idea was when you were getting together to write your research papers, to what you ended up with? How did things evolve from one to the other?
Oh, it definitely evolved because we originally were only going to do environmental impacts, but then that didn't really explain the cause of why people would move into the suburbs. So we had to examine the social implications and why it was attractive to people to go there.
Thank you.